Hi, welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show. Today's going to be an exciting show. Like we don't always have exciting shows and exciting guests, but today's a little bit different. We're going to talk about a little bit of entrepreneurship and the struggles that come along with entrepreneurship. And we're going to also talk about the importance of not only becoming an entrepreneur, but just how important branding and marketing is. Today on the show, we have a young lady who's about to release a brand new podcast that I hope you guys follow, subscribe, and like, and it's called Ignite. I'm not going to give her a name yet. And it's very powerful because she's bringing a lot of her expertise into this particular podcast. She's bringing her marketing abilities, her branding abilities, and her life experiences in her personal journey. A podcast that we definitely need, providing information in times of needs. Let's go back a little bit and tell you a little bit more about this young lady. It was funny because as we were doing the pre-interview, she said, back in the day. If you look at her, you'd be like, what are you talking about back in the day? You know, you look like you're 24 years old, you're talking about back in the day. And I was listening to her story as she elaborated on her journey into the marketing career. And there were some struggles in branding. And I asked her, what's the difference between marketing then and marketing now? She's going to come on the show and explain all of that, as well as who she is right now. Welcome to the show, Miss Chantelle Paiton. Welcome to the show, Chantelle.
Oh, thank you so much, Andre. I'm excited to be here.
Let's get right down to it. Your resume is like, boom. I said, when I looked at your thing, I was like, woo, what a resume. Let's tell the viewers a little bit about you before we get started.
Well, originally I was from another country. So my mom and I came out here to America from South Africa, and being very young, I was only 5 years old, and we moved to California. I grew up in the coastal area, and it was just a fascinating time to be able to grow up 80s, 90s, 2000s, and just see the way that the world was changing pretty quickly, especially with technology. But I mean, as we all go through the different kinds of trials and tribulations that we do, I mean, I grew up with a single mom, and she did get married a couple of times, but those marriages unfortunately didn't work out. And her and I butted heads a lot of the time. We both are just strong women. And, some of the things that I went through in my life, people often say to me, oh, well, you grew up by the beach. You probably had your life so easy. I mean, look at you. You probably had everything perfect.
Right.
And so far from the truth. I mean, I didn't grow up with money. I didn't grow up with any kinds of like fortunes or anything like that. So I went through a lot of struggles, and, kids were mean to me because I was from another country, and I had things that, built my insecurities along the way. But when I decided to go through school and do the things that I was doing, I was going to school for marketing, but I decided I didn't even want to finish school. I went right into work because I just needed to try to get my life ahead of where it was. And I was tired of struggling.
You mentioned, let's go back a little bit. You mentioned you was raised in South Africa. Were you born in South Africa, or you were just raised there?
No, as I said, I came here when I was 5.
Wow.
So I was raised here.
What do you remember about being over in another country prior to coming here? Do you remember anything?
I have a few memories of when I was very small, but we've gone to visit our family a few times, and the country is very different. Cultures are very different, but for the most part, I mean, this is where I am. This is home to me.
Who was your role models? You mentioned that you and your mom butt heads a lot, and there was different individual, I guess, males. Who was your actual role model? Growing
As a
up,
male,
both male and female, because you said you butted heads with your mom.
I didn't really have role models. My whole life, I always had prayed and asked for some kind of mentor to come into my life because I knew that there was something inside of me. I could feel it. Something I had been told that my whole life, like there's something I see inside of you that's so amazing, this light, this fantastic ability, like you're meant for big things. But I always felt like those big things just weren't happening. And I don't blame my mother for that. She did the best she could as a single mom. It's not easy, and I know that firsthand.
Mhm.
But I didn't have any role models. And as far as the male figure, like I said, she was married, and there was a male that she was married to for a long time that was my stepdad for a long time, but he kept his distance. We weren't emotionally very close. So, I mean, I definitely stumbled through along the way trying to figure things out on my own. And through school, I mean, I got good grades, but I always felt this kind of detachment of that everything that I was learning through the public school system, I didn't think made any sense. And I always felt like kind of like a little bit of a rebel because nothing that I was being taught really resonated with me, even going into college. And so when I decided to work, outside of college and go ahead in my career, I started pursuing the marketing direction because I was fascinated with it. And I loved working with people and I wanted to understand how people work. And a lot of that had to do with my own personal traumas, but it was also because I felt like I could help others. I just felt like there was something I was supposed to be doing, and I just didn't know what that was yet. And I
And you,
also eventually ended up in dysfunctional relationships because of the lack of that mentorship or those role models, as you say. But then eventually, as years passed, I realized through everything that I learned about people and about marketing and about just how the world was shifting, I learned how to read people and I learned the things that I needed to get done for my career and for myself. So eventually, I started my own business. And it was the best thing that I could have ever done because now I no longer felt this pressure like at a job where somebody's telling me, no, you need to do it our way. No, sorry, we're going to slam the door in your face, or you hit a ceiling because you're maybe a female, or maybe just they don't want to allow you to be a part of the bigger members of the club or whatever. So I got frustrated because I got sick of the micromanaging. I got sick of my ideas never being implemented, and I knew they were good. And so once I started my own agency and I started seeing how I was getting clients in and that I was helping people, their businesses were growing, and everything that I was bringing to the table, they loved. Then I realized that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be helping people, and everything that I have this passion and desire for inside of me can be poured in the right direction finally, and I don't have the limitations I had before.
what do you
So
think was the reasons that you mentioned? Let's go back a minute. You mentioned trying to understand people. What was it that you was trying to understand with people mainly? And then a two-part question: why was your mom so distant? You seem to have, walked this journey from high school to college to entrepreneurship on a silent road.
I would say that maybe it was a generational thing. So my mom explained to me that in South Africa, going to college wasn't like a big deal. There wasn't something people did. And then coming out here, there was a lot more pressure for that. It's like your kid goes to high school and they go to college, and that's, this conveyor belt of the white picket fence mentality that everybody has, that's the American dream. And, now being the position that I'm in, I'm constantly trying to educate people that you don't have to follow that conveyor belt to be successful emotionally, financially, physically. You know, the things that I went through, my mom, as you saying, being like not attached or present in that sense, is because I don't think she knew that that was kind of like the cliche thing to do, is that your parent is supposed to make sure that you get into college and you get married to the right person and all the things. I think she was just doing the best she could with what she had. And so, like I said, I don't blame her for anything like that. It's just we kind of came from a different culture and then get implanted into the American style. Then it's like a whole different concept of how you're supposed to be as an adult. So I stumbled through it. And yes, I felt very alone for a very long time. But I mean, because I was in marketing, I was doing nightclubs, I was working with huge businesses, huge magazines that were in the action sports industry. I met a lot of people and I had a lot of fun. But I mean, there was a loneliness in it for a long time because I didn't really know where my place was. I just knew I needed to be there somehow. So it
You
was a stumbling process.
you mentioned that you carried a lot of this into your personal life. How did the environment of your family, your mom and your stepdad and so forth, transition over into your personal life? Because you just didn't all of a sudden just say, I'm a successful marketing person. You seem to have had a journey from there to marriage to having a family. Then you mentioned the word dysfunction with throughout there. How did this happen prior to you getting into the marketing, or was you trying to do marketing at the same time as you was trying to develop a family?
It was simultaneous. And I do believe that when children go through certain experiences, then we get conditioned in our minds and what we think is a healthy or not healthy relationship. Whether we understand it or not, we start to get attracted to certain people based off of whatever traumas we've been through. And I didn't realize it at the time. I mean, it took until probably, my early 40s when I finally understood what was happening 30 years ago. So at the time when you're young, you don't understand. And then you get attracted to certain types of people. And there's a reason for that, that your brain is doing that. I didn't know that. So I was getting in dysfunctional relationships with other guys that weren't good for me. They weren't healthy for me. And I got in a very abusive marriage. And it got to the point where I had two small children and I was terrified. I didn't know what to do. I live in the state of California. It's expensive to live out here. I felt very stuck in that marriage. And it got to the point where I just said, enough is enough. I can't do this anymore. And I didn't want my children growing up thinking that this is normal. I hated the way I grew up. I didn't want them feeling like that too. So I made this conscious decision. I said, you know what? That's it. I'm going to just go out and do this on my own, be a single mom then. And I'm going to try to raise my kids with some normality to the best of my ability. But I really just want them to know that there's hope and there's possibilities for love, for nurture, and for things that are going to move in a positive direction, not
Did you
this
have,
negative, toxic environment.
was there any support through this? I mean, you mentioned things that a lot of people go through, um, toxic relationships.
Yeah.
Um, did you live in silence? Were there outlets for you to reach out to, or did you just decide to just do this on your own and walk away and take the journey? Did you have a support system?
Not really. So at the time, my mom had gotten remarried and her mind shifted in a different direction where I feel like when I was trying to tell her, she wasn't hearing what I was saying. And it wasn't until after the matter of the fact that I was in divorce court showing, pictures of bruises and holes and damage to property and to me that she finally perked up and was like, why didn't you tell me? And I said, I tried to, but you didn't hear me.
Right.
And yeah, and I couldn't talk about it with friends. I mean, nobody wants to hear you bitching and complaining all the time. And when I would try to turn to people and say, you were there, you saw it firsthand, some of them didn't want to participate. They didn't want to be part of the confrontation. Some people just don't want to be a part of the drama. And so they pull out of it. And I wanted to pull out of it too. So I just had to really dig deep. I mean, I was really broken down. I gained a ton of weight. I was very depressed. I hated my life. I didn't know what else to do. I was having panic attacks for the first time. And so then somebody finally told me, they said, Chantelle, there are resources for single moms out there that if need some kind of financial aid or food stamps or whatever it is, I mean, there are things you can turn to if it's as bad as you say. And I didn't know that. And I was so grateful for that conversation. And I said, okay, well, that's good to know. And then I finally started seeing a therapist. And literally the first day I walked into her office, I was bawling. I just broke down and she was kind of taken back. But she was a marriage counselor. And after listening to me after like a month or two, she said, Chantelle, typically my job, I try to keep people together for marriages, but after everything you've told me, you need to get as far away from this person as possible.
Mhm.
So I said, That's all I needed to hear. So I filed divorce immediately and I decided, you know what? I'm just going to dig deep and I'm going to make this work. And that
How did this affect? We hear countless stories of people's journey out of the into the fire and coming out. We hear their stories, but one thing that I like to know, you had children. What was this impact on your children? Because you still trying to figure out and navigate your ship. What was the impact on your children?
So they were very young. They were about 3 and 6 at the time.
Mhm.
And it was a lot, but being so young and resilient, young children don't really know how to wrap their head around everything that's happening. But I knew it was going to be devastating for them. I'm always trying to put myself in their shoes, at every age, every stage. And I try to consider, like, how is this making them feel? And so I put them in therapy right away, when after we got divorced, we were going through the divorce, and I wanted them to have a place that they know that they could talk and they could speak to people. And
2, 3. You know, we would you was talking about going to therapy and stuff, but the to me, a number one issue, and I'm pretty sure you would agree, is also your kids. How was this impacting your kids?
so the divorce obviously can be impacting on children, and I think all children kind of cope with it differently. My
Mhm.
children were very young. They were 3 and 6 years old. And even though they were young and there was so much going on, it was just a whirlwind and everything was happening so fast. I was moving out of where I was living. I had to rehome my dog, which I had for 5 years and was like another child to me. So that was really heartbreaking for me to do. That was hurtful for the children. So us moving, getting rid of the dog, dad's now going to be taken out of the picture. It's just a lot for,
Mhm.
children to have to deal with that. So I try to put myself in their shoes of, they're not going to always be able to vocalize what they want to be able to say or feel or in that moment. Maybe they don't want to tell mommy. They just think it might hurt her feelings, or they don't know what exactly to do or
Well,
say.
those are the formative years for. I'm a single father. I raised my daughter. When you're talking the ages of 1 to 7 or 1 to 6, those are the informative years. Those kids are, they may not be able to vocalize, but those kids are hearing and seeing what's going on. So I applaud you for recognizing that and getting them involved in at least some type of childhood therapy
Yeah.
to make sure that everything is okay. So
Yeah.
with that said, how do you begin to move on from dysfunction into becoming taking control of your life? You said that you always had a knack for marketing and branding and understanding and seeing people. How did you take that seeing people and manifest that into sculpturing your career?
Well, there was a big gap. So, through the marriage, as I had mentioned, it kind of broke me down who I was, my self identity. And I think a lot of people also, as we become parents, we kind of lose, our hobbies, our interests in certain things. Some people maybe stop pursuing things that they considered their dreams or whatever because they're focusing now on their family and just trying to make sure they're bringing in a paycheck and keeping food on the table. And with everything I was going through, I definitely felt like I'd lost my identity a lot and those things that were kind of my knack. And it was a kind of a rediscovery phase coming out of the divorce. It was just a lot for me too. And I just really had to pick up my bootstraps and say, I need to be a strong mother. I need to be there for them and help them cope with all of this, make sure their little minds and hearts are okay. But I need to make sure my mind and heart is okay. And I need to figure out who the heck Chantelle is again. And
How bad
so
was the divorce? Because we hear of some cases, especially you mentioned the word toxic relationship. I mean, did he make it easy for you to um um go through the divorce, or was that because you mentioned a gap? There was a major gap between the time of becoming an entrepreneur and dealing with this divorce. So I would take it, I'm just assuming now that that divorce and kids wasn't an easy journey because you're talking the legal system. You're talking getting on the court dockets. It can take a year, 2 years, continuous, another year, 2 years, different lawyers, a year, 2 years before you know it, you're 5 years and your career is slowly diminishing. to some degree, and your kids are getting older.
Yeah. Yeah, it was extremely challenging. I just started working at a job and I was working in the marketing department and I almost got fired from the place because I had to leave constantly to go to court because we had a nasty divorce. We were fighting heavily over custody. I didn't feel like he was going to suffice as a father because he is a very abusive person. And so I was fighting tooth and nail against it. And so we were constantly in court and it was jeopardizing towards my career. But I was just hyper focusing on being kind of that mama bear and being in a very protective mode. And so eventually I got to the point where I got a majority of custody because they were young and we just kind of dealt with what we were, presented and what was given to us as far as that was concerned. So then we just moved forward. And when I say the gap, I'm talking about like my confidence and my abilities to know who I am and what my place is in the world. And
Mm.
so I'm just working a job, just trying to get in a paycheck. And so then eventually it moves into me getting my own place. And it was the first time I got my own place under my own name. So, I mean, that to me was like a little milestone that was
Mm.
giving me that little tiny bit of boost of confidence. Like, hey, I can do this. I can actually take care of myself and my children. And so then it slowly got better and better. And then I got a raise and then I moved into a bigger place and then it just got better and better. And the company ended up selling for like $100 million. And so I was working for the CEO as his assistant finally at that point, but then he didn't need me anymore. So he said, you know what, let's just go our separate ways. Thank you for everything you've done. And at that point, I was like, I don't want to go work for another company and have to learn all of their stuff again.
How much this, I'm glad you brought that up. I'm seriously glad you brought that up because I hear so many people. I can understand your situation. You're working for the paycheck, but just
Right.
think about those individuals that literally work and get bank money and they put in all their creativity into building someone else's infrastructure
Right.
to have them turn around and sell it. They
Yep.
get money in their pocket and go, you know what? I appreciate what you've done, but I'm out of here. How did
Yeah.
that make you feel? Seriously, because you seem like the type of person that whatever you put your mind to, whether it be your business or crafting somebody else's, you're going to do your due diligence and give it all you got. How did that make you feel that he says, I'll holler at you later?
Is even though we left on good terms and I painted a smile on my face, it was very frustrating because I did pour a lot into working for that person and trying to better their business in the areas that he asked me to do it. And so that makes you feel very defeated. Like when you try to build something and you go, look at this great thing that I created, and then it just gets demoed. I mean, it's kind of heartbreaking because then
Mm.
you poured your blood, sweat, and tears into something and then it doesn't really go anywhere. So then I realized, okay, I don't need to feel like this anymore. And a very good friend of mine that I'd known for years said, why don't you just start your own marketing company? You're good at this, Chantelle, and you
Hold that thought, Chantelle. Hold that. So I can take the viewers into the whole deal with your branding and marketing. So I'm gonna go back because we can talk about this shit now because you no longer work for this company.
yeah.
When you started, when you went into that, I'm trying to let people understand exactly what your role was and how you impacted this company. When you took the position for the company, what was the company struggling in, and how did you bring your expertise in to elevate? Because evidently, if they were struggling, you came in, you did something, you shift changed something, and enough to they were able to sell the company. You see what I'm saying? So you bought something to elevate their marketing or their branding because they might have been maybe worth $40,000, $50,000. You come in, you recognize, you look at the blueprint, the paperwork, and go, oh, well, blah, 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 blah. Now all of a sudden, give and take 6 months later, their stock going up, everything, they realize it's time to cash out. Adios. What did you bring to that company that they were lacking and what allowed them to go up based on your work?
So my boss was the CEO of the company. There were three owners. I think they had like 120 plus employees and they sold insurance and they had a really great system intact for how they were building and being able to get the policies that were working for the business and for it to grow. However, the marketing department was struggling and so they were hiring more people. And when I came in, Having that certain kind of hustler mentality and like the tenacity to just not give a shit and move forward and bulldoze through something and say, I've got a better idea, I think is what they recognize and what they appreciated. And that's why they would listen. So, I mean, I was working there for maybe about 4 to 6 months, and I'm sitting there down in my little cubicle and on the phone and doing all the things that was asked me to do. I had never met the boss at that time, but I had my manager, and I said, let's try this, let's try this. And she wasn't really listening to me. And so I was like, okay, screw you. I'm going to go talk to them. And I just marched right upstairs. And I said, hey, I have some ideas. Can I talk to you? They said, sure. And they let me come into their big office. And I sat down. I said, I got all these great ideas. You should do this. You should do this. And they were like, aren't you just the cutest thing? Where did you come from? And they were like, okay, sure. Yeah, maybe. But what really caught their attention was that they also were starting a tequila company. And so one of the bosses, one of the owners, he was the main owner of the tequila company. The others were just investors. So he beelined to my desk one day, and everyone's like watching, like, ooh, is Chantelle in trouble? Why is the boss coming down to her desk? He was like, I love your energy. How would you like to help us? We just started this tequila company. Would you like to help us sell some of it? I was like, yeah, I'll send some tequila. Sure, let's do this. I'll go do it on the weekends, whatever.
Right.
And I was getting them accounts right and left. And they were like, who are you? And so then they started listening to me. And then they
Mm.
started listening to the ideas that I had, because now I'm making them money. And so they started implementing some of these ideas for the marketing for the insurance side of things as well. So I wouldn't say, I don't want to sit here and toot my horn and say that I'm the reason that they made $100 million, but I do think that I helped shift some mindsets a little
Right,
bit.
right. And that's usually what it takes is shifting somebody's mindset. You put thought and motion in action, and somebody took advantage of it and said, okay, let's see where we can go with it. Okay, so
Yeah.
keep going. So now what happens? They get rid of the company, you're pissed off. Let's get real. You're pissed. I would be pissed. And now you gotta start all over, basically all over again.
Yeah. Well, so I didn't want to start over again. I got tired of going into a place and they would say, we're going to do training for 90 days and put you on a trial period, and you're going to learn our product or service, and you're going to do it really well. And if we don't like you, you're replaceable. I hate that feeling.
Yeah.
So I just decided, you know what, I can't do this anymore. What am I going to do? And so my very close friend was like, why don't you start your own marketing company? And that it sounded terrifying. I was like, I can't start my own business. I don't even know the first thing of like how or what are the first steps? And they're like, just do it. That's you, Chantal. You know that you go in and you go in hard. And I was like, you know what? You're right. I need that boost. I need that confidence boost in my life. I need something that I can feel like this is what I'm supposed to do. I know I do it really well. And I think that I'm going to have a bigger impact this way. And I'm going to bring more benefit into my life and my children's lives. I'm tired of following along with what everybody else told me that I was supposed to do. Oh, go to college, get married, do this, do that. I was like, no, I'm going to do it my way. And this is going to work. And I convinced myself this is going to work.
Mm.
And so I just started pushing forward. I started looking up the information. I started turning to people that I know were in business, or, were tax accountants or whatever, that were friends of mine. And I was like, what do I do? How do I start? Get an LLC, do this, do this, do this. I was like, okay, got it. I'm checking off the list. And I just bulldozed. I mean, I didn't wait for next week. I'll open the bank account. I mean, I was like firing like hard because I wanted to get into a direction fast.
Mhm.
And so I just started learning everything that I needed to learn to make this specific thing work. And I was just taking that big leap and that big chance. Check out my website, look at my social media, try me out. I swear I can help you. And, a lot of people watch when you have a startup, they watch you in the beginning and they're like, yeah, let's see if this goes anywhere. Maybe this is just another bogus startup. And 90% of people who start a business fail after the first year because they give up, because it's just too hard. And that first year was freaking hard for me because within the first 4 months, COVID started.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was the biggest kick in the teeth. I was like, oh, this is so exciting. I've got a couple clients. This is really going in a good direction. I'm so happy. And boom, it's like the whole world stops and everyone freaks out and pulls out on marketing. I was like,
Right.
no, this is the best time to do marketing, because now you really need to emphasize and tell people this is why they need your product or service. So I then, on top of that, now have 2 kids where their schools are stopped. Now they're on my lap. Now I got to be mom, their teacher, and bring home the bacon. It was It was insane. I mean,
And
so
don't
they,
forget you got to cook it up too.
yeah, yeah, I gotta bring it home and cook it.
Yeah,
Exactly. So, I mean, we all thought it was only gonna be 2 weeks. Obviously, it wasn't.
three and a
But
half months in
yeah,
some places. Yeah,
yeah. So I'm in California, and where I was at, everything was shutting down. It was intense. And they were just like, nope, schools are shut down. They not only shut down for the rest of 2020, they were shut down for 2021 as well. So it was a lot for me to take on. But I, again, pulled up my bootstraps. I said, we're going to make this work. And we were just kind of floundering around. I was like, okay, we need to be
you said we. Were
me and
there
the
other were there other people involved in your startup?
not at first, but eventually I started hiring people
Oh,
to work and I would sub out. I'd subcontract so I could work from home and
I
be with
got
my
you.
children.
Okay.
Um, so when I say we, I mean the kids. So the
Okay.
kids were just kind of floundering around, and I just kind of felt like, okay, this needs to be more regiment than it is. I feel like things are just chaotic and all over the place, and this isn't going to help me because I need to focus on work and bringing in money. But I do also want to make sure you guys don't struggle and fall through the cracks, and that you're, doing well with your schoolwork as well.
Right.
So I started creating charts and just getting very regiment about like time allocation and schedules and just creating lists and all kinds of things and really just creating a lot of structure. And even though it was super regiment, it helped. It helped me to be able to take care of the kids and be able to be an entrepreneur and work for myself. So
What was the difference from COVID to then and now? You got a business now, it's doing good, but what did what did you learn from then to now as it relates to marketing and branding? What have you learned that has made you elevate your game to pass that knowledge on to other individuals? Because let's get real, we talked about this offset. COVID, everybody became a marketing expert. Everybody became a branding expert. And then it's almost like now the weeds are being cut and you are seeing the real individuals that, like you said, it takes time and resilience to craft something. What's the difference between then and now that you take into into your field?
that is a great question. There's a lot of things you mentioned earlier about when it comes to marketing and how to handle business. Some people turn to the AI direction now more than ever, and some people like to do things a little more old school, just depending on personality or what their business or industry is. What I've learned in this time that I've been an entrepreneur and had my own business with marketing is that initially I was with this understanding that it was all about just getting your business out there and getting some attention. And as long as people were seeing your name or your brand or your logo, then it's creating the impression and it's getting people to either come into your restaurant, pick up the phone, whatever it is. What I've learned along the way is what separates me, I think, and anybody from one another is if you really nail down what it is that you're offering. Your brand is the promise that you are making to your customer. So even if it's a digital marketing agency, which I know thousands of them all started during COVID because it was easy, that doesn't mean that they're necessarily functional or useful, beneficial, or even really understand what it is that the customers need.
Right.
So they can sit there and say, oh, I'm going to offer you SEO and advertising and all this stuff. And it's like, okay, great. But what is it that you're really offering? And this is where I like to take a lot of pride in what I try to work with my clients is understanding their needs and customizing around that. So when I first meet with somebody, I try to get them to understand what's your why? What's your message? Why did you start your company? What is your business about? If you have a retail company, if you're a doctor, if you have a restaurant, I mean, there's every industry is saturated.
So almost like what is your mission statement
Yeah.
to your customer?
Right. So when people think of a very specific place that they love to go or a
Mhm.
brand of clothing that they love to wear, there's a reason for it. They
Right.
like to go to that one restaurant because they love the owner. He always hooks them up with a free beer and he's a lot of fun to talk to. Or they wear a specific clothing because they like the material or the way that it fits. Or they go to this certain doctor, they love going there because they know that they're going to always take care of their needs. So you as a business owner are always a representation of your brand. Now there are people who own a business, and then there are business owners, which are two different things. So there might be businesses where you don't know who the owner is, and there may be franchises and lots of different locations, or maybe it's insurance offices, but you'll never actually see the owner. But then that boils down to, what is the business going to offer? Is it going to have the best customer service or the best pricing? Or, when you're creating your brand, and this is what I'm trying to answer your question with, like, over these years as being an entrepreneur, I try to teach people that your brand is all about how you're presenting your business in comparison to the competitor. So you could be a barbershop, and in the same shopping center is another barbershop, but why does everybody want to go to yours?
You must go to the barber when I go, because that's exactly how that whole setup is.
Yeah.
He's a barber, there's a barber, there's a barber. And I'm thinking to myself as I'm going in there, why am I going to this guy? Why am I not going to this guy? And it's funny, but none of them have I'm looking at, like what you said, none of them have any reason why one is different than the other. So in that case, I guess that would be called chaos as a consumer, me.
Yeah.
What are some of the when you're dealing with people, let's rephrase this. When you're dealing with clients, what are three major things that clients suffer from as it relates to marketing and branding that you see constantly? Because mistakes in business is usually the same mistakes that all of us make. But you being in the field of marketing and branding, what are the three things that you see most common with young entrepreneurs as it relates to their branding and marketing schemes?
Okay, three things. Their
Yeah.
message isn't clear. They're not tapping into making sure that the customer is experiencing a feeling with their brand, and customer service. So I would say those three things are probably the most important things to think about.
I'm really big on
Because
customer service. I'm sorry. That's my I don't mind the brand, but customer service is kind of like very key to me. If
Yep.
I'm spending money, I don't want you kissing my ass. Don't get me wrong. But a smile can win a lot of tips better than you bringing your attitude to work.
Right. Right. Yep. The way that somebody feels when they see your ad or your
Mhm.
logo, because that's exactly what the goal is. You need to ignite a feeling, a sensation when you create an advertisement or a logo, or when you have a conversation, you open up a location, or start doing whatever it is you put, making those initiatives for your business. You're trying to create a feeling out of your customers. So it could be an advertisement that's really happy, or it could be very sad, or something that what you want people to be angry and upset and like do something. So the whole idea is that call to action, because if they're feeling a sensation, an emotion based off of what it is they see when they experience your brand, then they're most likely going to respond with action. So they might feel, super excited about something, or maybe they're feeling sad inside and they know you're going to help relieve that sadness, or maybe it's a physical pain, whatever. Anyway, the point is like, whatever the person is feeling, that is going to give them the response. And the same goes with having a meeting with someone.
Mhm.
A lot of entrepreneurs make the mistake of like wanting to sell something right out the gate. Oh, I've got this discount, you need to buy it now while it's so hot. And some people achieve sales that way, but for the most part, I like the concept of like, you want to take them out to coffee, not propose for marriage right away. You want to build a relationship with customers and clients and build their trust first.
Mhm.
So even if you're not meeting them right out the gate, maybe you're creating, a drip system that is going to somehow build their trust in your company and your brand before they buy.
Mhm.
They want to know what are they going to benefit from you and be able to trust you, so that eventually they'll get to that point where they're like, okay, I really like this person. I like what they're offering, or I like this company. So I want to buy from them. I want to buy their product or service.
You got a lot of stuff going on. Um, Before we run out of time, first of all, I want to say thank you for taking time out of your busy day. It's a 3-hour difference from Indiana to beautiful San Diego, California. I know you want to get out there and enjoy the warm weather and the beach. You got a lot of stuff going on. Before we get started, how can the viewers reach out to you, first of all? And then second of all, tell us a little bit about your new project, your new podcast.
Yeah, gladly. So Chantelle Paiton, you can find me on Instagram or Facebook. Just the username is at Chantelle Paiton. That's CHANTELLEPAITON. You can also reach out to us at savvybrandinggroup.com if you need any marketing or branding. Digital marketing is our realm. We love being in that digital world because we'll get you all the return of investment that you're looking for. And then when it comes to the podcast direction, that's something I just launched this year. So I was very excited about that because as I've shared this story with you about, all my trials and tribulations and traumas, I took that as I want to hear everybody else's stories too, because I know I went through my stuff and I made that decision where I finally said enough is enough and I'm going to change. I'm going to dig deep and I want to make my life the way I want it to be. We created this podcast because we wanted to be able to hear other people's stories. Was it a weight loss transformation? Did you go through some trauma also in your life and you said, I can't take it anymore, and this is not going to define me. I'm going to be better and I'm going to have more in my life. Just you watch and see. Or maybe you want to shift careers because you're like, hey, you know what? I want to be an entrepreneur and make a ton of money, or whatever it is. We want to hear those rags to riches stories, or the trauma to triumph and turning pain into power. I love hearing those stories, and I love sharing mine too, because I think we've all been through something. And when I hear someone that has a moment where they were ignited and they decided to go into a direction, I just felt like the podcast was a perfect place for that.
I appreciate you taking time to come on the show. Guys, make sure you support, subscribe, and like our new podcast. We need to get the information out. This has been another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Crayton Show.